And as we like to start all our meetings, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ted, do you want to bring us up to date and tell us what we got new here?
Yes. First, each of you have 2 yellow books. Those are the proposed budget books. They live a kind of short life, but this captures what you offered to the public a couple weeks ago. Then you have a couple of sheets of paper in front of you. At the top of the first one is a brief summary of the comments you heard at the public hearing. Then below that are things that have changed since the proposed budget, and things never stand still. There's always something happening. But we had a change in some school projects because of actual state funding. We have a number now that we didn't have before. Piney Run, we caught a mistake we had made, corrected here. We moved some cash from pavement management, put out reallocated bonds there, and then, and this ties to E, right? No. Okay. All right. Remind me, why did we do that?
We had reappropriated a little too much off of one of the projects onto a
Oh,
different one.
right, yes. Okay, then in the Rec and Parks CIP, the first two items there are just flip-flopping in the schedule. Once we got the actual program open space allocation, we had to adjust the town fund money to match. And then with the legislation that allowed us to use the land acquisition, POS, we had to change that. And we reduced cash to the state's attorney headquarters building. When we were talking about replacing bonds with cash, we didn't catch in that moment that a little bit of the bonds had already been sold, so we can't make that change, so we had to adjust for that. And then there were a couple of contracts on relatively new buildings in the facilities area that hadn't been captured. All of that leads you to your new bottom line, which is not significantly different than we were. And the second page is just a little bit more detail on what I just talked through. Okay, we have today for you to consider any changes you might want to make to the proposed budget. We also have a session scheduled on Tuesday. It is our great hope that we will finish today. Finishing next Tuesday puts a lot of pressure on trying to make the changes and get it all captured in the ordinance. And of course, if it comes to that, you know, we'll do it, but it'd be great if we can get it done today. And that's it for us. Oh, no, there's a new face up here. Right in the middle, this is Maria. She just started with us on Thursday.
She'll be
Welcome.
answering all the questions today.
All of them.
Glad to have you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, I'll start things.
Oh, good. I was going to say, was there anything else, Ted? That was,
No, that's it. It's all yours.
Well, I'll start things off. I'd like to add something to this budget. So we've had some discussions over the past couple months about in increasing benefits for Sheriff's Department and Department of Fire and EMS. If people remember, we increased employee contribution from 8 to 9%, and that in turn increased the multiplier for those folks. But I would like to discuss the DROP program again. That's the Deferred Retirement Option Plan. And what it allows is people who are eligible for retirement to keep working, and that pay goes into a separate account. I'm going to make a motion that the Board of County Commissioners approves the establishment of the DROP program, the Deferred Retirement Option Plan, for FY26 to be effective and operational no later than January 1st, 2026.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Okay, just a couple of mechanical thoughts. Doing this won't have any effect on the budget because we don't know what to build into it. So it's not inherently tied to the budget. And the other thing, I guess you can say we're going to do a drop, but there's a lot of smaller decisions that need to be made to determine what the drop is. So even saying we're approving it will still leave a bunch of other stuff to be done.
So should there be a recommendation that we make a decision about this outside of budget deliberations, is what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying it's
I
not
don't know
necessary to
what-
do it with the budget,
I don't know what the
but it's
cost is
okay,
associated with this, so I mean, I can't,
right?
unless there's a dollar amount.
No, there's not.
Right.
So you make the decision or not, it won't change what we're adopting. As far as what this will mean, we will probably need some time, and when I say some time, probably some years, to see what actually happens to determine if we need to budget something differently.
And hence the January 1st, 2026 date, which may, hopefully is enough time. I understand obviously there's opportunity cost for HR. I mean, they've got to consider the time that's going to be taken to establish this. And there's probably some administrative cost as well. And then there's a lot of unknowns, of course. And there's a lot of things to consider for the future as well. This wouldn't apply to Department of Fire and EMS individuals for a number of years, but there has to be some pre-thought to what happens one day when there's 15 or 20 or 30 people going to this program at the same time. That might be a little down the road, but I understand all those considerations need to be made. Ms. Bixler's been great about sharing all this information with us. I know there's a lot of unknowns, but we did vote on some improvements for Fire and EMS and Sheriff's Office. They did make some, I mean, I don't know if concession is the right word, but they were willing to increase their employer contribution from 8 to 9%. That makes it very helpful for us to figure out how we're going to pay for this, considering we've allocated $2 million for FY26. That money will still be there. So for that reason, I'm perfectly comfortable with the motion to get this established and get it going now.
I don't fully understand what it does. I think you said it allows them to work after retirement. They can do that today. That won't change. This doesn't change that. What this does, that I'm not sure I like, once they get in a drop program, they do have a drop dead retirement date that they cannot work afterwards. And I'm not sure, I'd like to see us study it some more. I'm not sure how fiscally responsible it is to put something in the budget when we don't know what it'll cost. And I think there's a lot of questions. I think it's a good issue. I think we've given them a whole lot of stuff this year. And I'm just skeptical if, A, can it be in place by January? And B, is there anybody that even wants to take advantage of it in January? I think we heard less than a dozen people would even be eligible. So I understand this and I like this, and I think I've said before, my feeling was if we couldn't afford some of the other stuff, we might do something like this. But since we've done so much for them, I don't know if it's necessary to do it this quickly.
Just on the cost part of it, I think inevitably, if we do a drop, we are going to put it in place before we know what it's going to cost. Unlike the pension changes, there's not a direct cost we can try and quantify. You know, it's more ripple effect kind of things, like do we change how long people are working? Do we change when people choose to retire? That, you know, might end up having some costs, but it's going to be down the road. So that part, at least, I don't think you really need to worry about.
I mean, I'm not against this. I don't think at all, right? But I just don't know the benefit of putting this into our budget discussions and, again, deliberations or accepting of the budget. I mean, I would be abstaining to something, because I'm not against it. I just don't know how it would be implemented in regards to the budget right now. I think we need work to do, so that's,
Well, even with more time, we're not going to have any better idea of what to do to the
I mean,
budget.
but again, what is the budget implication?
Right now, I'm saying there is no immediate
Right, So why are
implication.
we talking about this during the budget? That's my,
Well,
I just don't understand. I mean, we could bring up other, issues that have nothing to do with the budget today, but if we're gonna focus on the budget, why don't we just put this on the schedule for Thursday or next Thursday and have a conversation and vote on putting it in place? But I just don't believe it's a budget issue. So,
In thinking about this, Commissioner Guerin, did you talk to the Sheriff DeWeese?
No.
So I don't know, I'd be curious, does he think this is a plus or a minus, or?
I don't know, I see it as a plus. And I think that making decisions like this and keeping them as part of the budget obviously sends a pretty strong statement. I think I'm lumping this in. We've had discussions during this budget session about other changes we've made, and I've always felt like DROP was part of that overall discussion. We did allocate money for next year for the increased benefits, and to me, this is the same flavor. This is the same issue. It's just the third leg of a stool, and that's why I'd like to see it done now. And hopefully this gives us enough time to get it up and running. I know there's going to be a lot of considerations that have to be made, but I think making these decisions now prior to as part of our budget discussion sends a message. I also think that it sends a very strong message in terms of what kind of place we're going to work, what kind of place this is to work in the county with this particular benefit. So because there are budget implications, that's why I'm bringing it up now, and I made the motion.
And you're saying it applies to both Sheriff and EMS?
Correct. Although, Department of Fire and EMS, since we're only a couple years old, it's who's to say who the first person will be to take advantage of this? It's going to be decades down the road.
But some of the employees are older.
Mm-hmm.
So, and depending on the parameters we develop for this, there could be some eligible today. But depending on what we do, and I guess my other question would be, what's the understanding? There's a lot of decisions to be made. Will they all be made by HR? Will they come to us with those? What's your feeling on what we ought to approve moving forward?
HR would be coming to you.
Yeah, can I?
Yeah.
So yes, Human Resources would put together some recommendations, because there are a lot of variables, as has been referred to. I'd like to make a play for not such a hard and fast deadline. Human Resources will work on this diligently, but this is a huge, huge lift, and they don't want to, give it short shrift. They want to do it right, and so if the board chooses to put this in the budget, that's your decision. I just would ask for more leniency on when it would be done. I mean, certainly next fiscal year, But, you know, if it's more March or April rather than January, you know, it might be, because it's, as I say, it's a big animal. And Human Resources doesn't feel that they can do it in basically in 6 months.
Again, what's the benefit of putting it in the budget? That's the only thing. I mean, I'm not against this. I just don't understand why.
There are,
it goes in the
I think
budget.
Commissioner Garen's indicated that they're, at the moment, the administrative costs are relative to the entire budget, on the smaller side, but ultimately, there are definitely budgetary constraints.
But we don't know the numbers associated with that.
But as Ted said, we're really not gonna know until we get into it. We can make certain assumptions based on what we know of the people now, but you can't, you know, that, sort of like your investment advisor says, you know, past performance doesn't predict future whatever. It would be very difficult to indicate exactly what this will cost.
You know, at one end of the spectrum, even if you make the benefit available, you don't know that anybody will take it.
Right.
And then there would be no cost because nothing has changed.
Right.
I don't expect that that's going to happen, but we don't know what the impact's going to be.
And there are a lot of variables, so, yeah, so, you know, no people take it, you could have the maximum number of people take it, so. But my only ask would be just a little bit more time consideration.
Any further discussion?
We have a motion and a second, right?
Say again?
We have a motion and a second.
I understand that. I said, is there any further discussion which would make the motion in a second? If we didn't have that, we couldn't discuss. So, yeah, I fully understand that. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. It's in.
I'll just abstain from it. I mean,
So 4 to 1 abstention.
yeah.
So if I'm
Well,
sorry.
no, are we doing January 1st? I mean, that's what the motion was.
Yep.
So you can't change it to FY '26.
Correct.
And I guess if something happens between January 1, 2026 and now, we can always change that.
I would anticipate hearing, I would anticipate getting updates from Ms. Bixler, and
Yeah,
she'll
yeah,
inform us
yeah.
of any adjustments and things of
Yeah,
that nature,
yeah.
sure, yeah.
Well, do we have to open up the budget to make a change? It's now in the budget. So in order to make a change in the budget, you have to open up the budget.
There's not going to be anything to change in the budget.
Then why are we putting it in the budget?
The deadline is, I think, what Commissioner Rothstein's referring to.
Well, that's not going to show up in the budget. I mean,
Is this going to show up in the budget?
no, there's nothing to show up.
I agree. So we just made a decision on something completely outside of the budget, which is fine. I just want to make sure we understand that wasn't, you know, in our open session discussion. It's not a budget issue. I just don't feel comfortable, and that's fine. It's a done deal, but
What-
if we make a change to this, I will say we need to open up the budget to make a decision change, even though there's no monetary.
Would we be stronger with this if we put it on the open agenda for whatever, 2 weeks from now, and passed our intention to develop this in an open meeting also? I'm not saying undo what we just did, but would that make it a stronger position?
To do it in addition to this, to do it in addition to,
Yeah, because it's not gonna show in the budget,
This has
so.
nothing to do with the
You know,
budget.
we know what we did today, but you willing to do that,
So,
bring it
I
up
mean,
in open?
if,
So are you looking for more of a deeper conversation and open?
Oh, my God.
Are you saying that's what you want on a Thursday? Because obviously we voted on this, and without going into previous closed budget meetings, there were conversations on a number of things that kind of
Yeah.
aligned with that, and I'll leave it at that. Whether we want to, what was that?
What does that mean? What did you say?
Did we not discuss some other areas in closed regarding not just the drop, but also disability? That was a discussion. Since we're in open today, I can bring any of this up, so I
Of
mean,
course, but that had to do.
but that was all brought at the same time.
That has to do with the budget.
I understand that, but they were all brought together, packaged at the same time, so if they were all within that same moment, how would they be any less one or the other?
If we need to make a change to a decision made on disabilities, then we would open up the budget to make those changes. If we're making a change on a motion that had just been approved, then we would need to open up the budget documents to make a change. And that's what concerns me, is there's no fiscal tie to this. So it would have, well.
I mean, I understand.
I mean, again, I'm not against this, it's just, I don't believe.
No, I
it's a
understand,
budget.
and I understand where you're coming from. I guess the question would be, our head of budget just said we wouldn't have to open the budget up, but then moments prior to us taking the vote, the point was, well, we need time to study this, but we won't know till we do it. So it almost becomes incredibly abstract. I hear what you're saying, but I mean, we do have a 4-1 vote, so I guess the question is, do we want to move along and try to do some other things today, or we want to?
Oh, definitely, but my question with this is, we did a 4-0 vote to put this in the budget, but we're not putting it in the budget, so I just ask, would we be clearer to do this in open session? And that's a yes or no, and we can move on.
I would completely agree that when Ms. Bixler, HR has more information because she's been acquiring information, I think it's very smart and be prudent for her to come before the board and provide us with additional details. But as Commissioner Gordon mentioned, all the discussions around drop were in the context of the $2 million we already set aside for FY26 to increase these benefits. So for that reason, I think it's perfectly germane to make this motion now, because again, we provided $2 million in a budget that I don't think we're using all of, because again, these employees agreed to increase their contributions from 8 to 9% in an effort to make things work a little easier for the people of the county and the board and the budget. So I think it's completely germane. That's why I brought it up, and we've had our vote, and I'd like to move on. And Ms. Bixler and HR,
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing from them in
Yeah,
open session.
I don't want to undo this.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't want to
This is
move on
done.
yet. So,
I don't think it's very practical, but again, I don't care, so let's move on.
well, no, I'd rather not, because we just said we put a timeline of January 1st, 2026 as a start date. And then you said, if Ms. Bixler gets us the information and we're good to go, that's great, but if not, then changes need to be made. I mean, this is not tied to the $2 million, the disability issue that is focused on budget. This is a program, and I'm not against a program. I just don't understand why we're doing it in the budget if there's no specific fiscal note tied to it. And if there's not, then we could have done it later, giving staff direction. But we're not giving staff direction, we're saying, staff, you will do this by January 1st, 2026. So,
So there are administrative costs associated with it regardless. So there is a slight budget impact.
We don't
It
know
may
how
not
much
be
that is.
identified separately in the budget, but there are. And ultimately, there certainly will be. It's unusual to have, in a budget motion, to have some kind of a start date that isn't July 1 of that fiscal year. But this, does require study and creation and writing and, approval by the board of what it is and things like that. So it's a bit of a unique animal compared to the other things that you normally do. But as Ted said, he doesn't have any right? It's perfectly appropriate, this motion is, right?
Is the 2 million still in as 2 million?
Yes.
And, again, would this be stronger if we did pick something, 50 grand for this year and 100 grand for future years? Would this be stronger if we showed it as ongoing money, or that really doesn't matter?
I just don't think it's necessary.
Okay. Okay, good. Next?
Okay,
Well, if
go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Tom. So I know during, over the course of the last couple of years, I've brought up Tawnytown Senior Center before. And, for years now, going back to previous boards, they've been asking to have the back room in the Tawnytown Senior Center finished. That'll include putting up drywall, painting, flooring, electrical outlets, and a door to enter and exit the room. The use of the facility at Tawnytown Senior Center has been expanding the kinds of things that they're doing there. For example, one of the things that they've taken on in the last couple of years is glass cutting. And they need some additional space to be able to store things and keep things to the side. And so what I'd like to do, and I have a budget request form if anybody's interested in seeing that regarding the backroom project. I'd like to put $100,000 into the budget for the backroom for Tawnytown Senior Center. And I'd also like to propose a way to be able to pay for it. So as we had talked about a couple weeks ago, Ted had mentioned that Project Open Space money, thanks to the state now, can be used for development and maintenance of parks. So my proposal is to take, say, $500,000 of that program open space money, use that to supplant the money that we're using for Krimgold Park, and restore $500,000 to our fund balance, from which we could then take $100,000 for the Tawnytown Senior Center and any other last-minute additions we may have today.
Why can't we just put $100,000 to Tawnytown Senior Center?
Oh, could do that too.
I mean,
It's just,
Yeah, I don't,
let's just say, because I agree with you, let's just, and I will second your motion if it's simplified to putting $100,000 to Tawnytown Senior Center renovations.
I'll make a motion to put $100,000 from fund balance at Tawnytown Senior Center.
I second that motion.
and, yeah, and we have a motion, a second, and yeah, this, Tawnytown and a couple other senior centers have all been proposed, and this was part of the proposal. It was also more than this, but yeah, I think this is a good idea, and I think you'll tell us at the end of the day, but I don't think how we left the budget in our last meeting, I don't think funding for these amounts is a big deal, correct?
No. Yes.
Yes,
correct.
Gotcha, yeah.
Yes, you're correct. No, it's
Okay, I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Sure. I wanted to bring up the Heart of the Civil War area funding, wanted to reinstitute that. I think it was at $31,000. Wanted to make a motion that we reinstitute that.
Second.
Go ahead.
I have a motion and a second, and just reinstitute at the amount we had.
Correct. I had some extensive conversations with Liz Chateau last week, Monday morning. We went through some of the processes of how they're approaching this, got some additional background for us, which I think would be beneficial not just to local nonprofits, but also county government as well. City of Westminster has been quite successful in receiving funds for them, so I would like to, as I mentioned, made the motion. So I think this would be a good opportunity for us, and I think it'd be a great consideration of a continued partnership.
And the intention would be it's ongoing money
Correct.
at that amount.
Correct.
No inflation, no
Correct.
change. Any other questions or comments?
Was there a second?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'd like to bring up and discuss the Krimgold Park money that we put in. What was the total amount?
Just under 4.8 million.
4.8. And and Commissioner Garrett, obviously I want to hear your input, but that's a lot of money for 2 softball fields. I'm not sure 2 softball fields solve use problems there. I think it's more multi-purpose fields and usable. And I'd like to take that 4.8 and redescribe it and put it towards multi-purpose turf-type fields. And the first one, well, let's assume they're $2 million each. So this does 2 for sure, and maybe more depending on how the budget works out. I think the first 2 would be Crim Gold and Cape Horn. Cape Horn has multi-purpose fields lighted, and that spreads it out to pretty much opposite ends of the county. And I think Woodbine and Winfield would get more use out of a multi-purpose field that was now, they could use tonight, instead of, they probably can't use their fields tonight. And I just, it doesn't take away the 20-year-old plan that shows softball fields, but who knows? I think to do work off a 20-year-old plan is going to take a couple of years of redesign and stormwater management, erosion control, and who knows what. This may too, but I just think that's a better use of that money for Woodbine, Winfield area, and obviously now Hampstead, Manchester area. And I think it's been frustrating, and the school system's been great. Manchester Valley, there's an MOU that exists if North Carroll Rec Council paid for a turf field there, how it would be used by the community versus the school. Probably, but doesn't need to be in this motion, probably Rec and Parks is going to have to work out MOUs with the opposite priority, that the local rec council gets first use, then maybe other rec councils, and then maybe schools, but I think they're more than capable of working all that out. So I guess, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I appreciate those comments. Yeah, you're right. You've got a plan that has building out softball fields, but then you've got really what amounts to the reality of the situation today, and it's the need for multi-use fields, particularly lacrosse and soccer. So I appreciate this motion, and will support it.
Okay, then with that discussion, then I make a motion that we take the 4.8 for Grim Gold Park, which still would have been orchestrated by Rec and Parks. So we don't have to change that. We'd like to change that to multipurpose turf fields at Grim Gold and Cape Horn, and other areas to be determined after that. Like I say, I'm assuming 2 million per field, but who knows, maybe it'll be $1.8 million, maybe it's enough for a third one, maybe this will eat it up.
Yeah, the stormwater management is always a question. I think that with Crim Gold, we may have some things going for us in terms of some of that already being completed, but you're right, you never know. And we're awaiting some more local information about people that are trying to put in turf fields to see what gets approved and what sort of stormwater management plan they get approved. So, yeah, I concur. Was that a motion?
Yeah, that was a
Sec-
motion. Is
second.
that a second?
Second. Sorry, I lost track. I'll try to keep up.
Any
Got a
further
lot going on.
discussion, or, and it doesn't change the dollar amount, you're just gonna,
I would just put the responsibility on our rec and parks. I mean, for us to sit here, saying this is the most important place for it to go, our rec and parks knows the best place. And our rec and parks is the closest to the community users than we are. I mean, that's just the way it works through the rec councils. And so Bob Hicks and Lisa, as far as the activities, I think know the needs best. So, I mean, I'm accepting, because we asked, what are the projects? And, Bob and Lisa shared this, and also the projects with the Bureau of Aging. Roberta sent this to us. Tawnytown's number one, so it's pretty easy for us to say Tawnytown. I just want to make sure we're in line with what our staff that has the responsibility to oversee these projects are, we don't get in front of them. That's my only, that is my major concern, it's, and I'm gonna talk about another project that happened that way, and we don't want these albatross just sitting there because we think it's a good idea from here, so.
Ted, how much project open space money do we have that had previously been unable to be used for development and maintenance of parks? Do you know?
$939,590.
So 939, I'll say $939,000.
900,000.
900,000, okay.
Well, I think what Commissioner Rothstein is suggesting is a change in the motion. I am fine with the motion that is now, that these are going to be at Krim Gold and Cape Horn. In terms of the needs of the communities, I feel like I have a very good understanding of what is needed down in that area, and this would go a long way. Krim Gold Park is a regional park, but it's used by a lot of different entities. It's unique in that regard. So I think it's a perfect place for it. And the Cape Horn field is technically and in theory on the other side of the county, and that makes it more convenient for people there as well.
And I'm just saying, I don't know the needs as much as I think I should across the county. I understand District 5 a little bit more than I understand District 1, 2, 3, and 4. But looking at the entire county, our Rec and Parks has the best insight, abilities, responsibilities. I attend those meetings regularly with the rec councils, and I don't want to say they speak a different language, but they go into such depth on their needs that, I'm relying on them. So if we believe that these are the two fields locations, then that's fine. I'm for that. I just want to ensure that they are put into the equation when it comes to prioritizing the fields. I mean, if not, then why are we prioritizing if we're not going to resource them? So, or why are we asking them to prioritize?
So Commissioner, would it, could we?
It's more just dialogue.
Oh, okay, I was going to suggest maybe
Changing
then,
this, I mean,
maybe we take some of that program open space money and set it to the side specifically for the priorities that you're referencing. Maybe we increase Parks and Rec a little bit this year with that money?
I think,
that's,
I think
that's
we're,
not where I was going.
Oh, okay, I was just.
yeah, I think we're already, and I struggle with Tawnytown Senior Center. We're going around what Department of Aging may have as priorities. This, we're going around Rec and Parks and Rec and Parks Advisory Board in priorities. And who knows, maybe they want to take the 939,000 more than they used to think they had and add that to this and do 3 fields. But I think we're telling them enough, and the intention for my thoughts on the motion is we already said this was helping Krim Gold area. And so I wouldn't want to leave it loose that it all of a sudden didn't. And I know I've talked to different people. They may or may not have lighting there. They may or may not be able to do temporary lighting. They may be able to do, lighting is so much better today as far as neighbors and all that than it ever was. So, yeah, I understand the different priorities of the areas, and I think Rec and Parks will work this out nicely.
I mean, I was and still am, a very strong advocate for Krim Gold Park. I mean, at the rec council meetings that I attend, I was a strong advocate for Krimgol Park in getting it funded. And I'm a strong advocate for all of the fields across the county, as long as they align. Tawnytown just so happens, again, I don't know if we're fortunate, but Bureau of Aging does have that as their highest priority, so that does very clearly align.
Yep.
But yes, I'm supportive of this. I'm just saying,
Yeah, I
I
understand.
don't want to take away the Rec and Parks responsibility with their councils and their community insight that I believe, regardless of how hard we can work, they are gonna have a better pulse on it, so.
And-
Maybe I'm wrong on that, and that's fine, but I believe that they have a very good pulse, the two of them.
Yeah, and a little bit that softens it for me is this was almost 4.8 million that they didn't have before. They like that, you know, with one vote of us, they wouldn't have it at all. So I think saying, here's almost $5 million, but we want you to go this direction with it, I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah. Okay.
Any more discussion, comments, questions?
Okay,
All
One,
those in
one
fa-
follow-up on that. We don't have any numbers, but I guess I'd like at least a nodding of the head for us to try to include something for the maintenance funding that will be necessary for these fields, so we can build that into the plan.
It'll be cheaper than grass fields, I can tell you that. And I've built about 8 of them,
So
so.
we're gonna have to find out the funding, though.
Yeah, you need, there is maintenance and there will be replacement someday, but, I've seen, Francis Scott Key and Winters Mill not be able to play football at home for over a year because of the condition of their field, so, and we probably threw, not we, across the street, I'm not there anymore, probably threw hundreds of thousands of dollars at each school trying to maintain those fields, so, yeah, I don't know, and the other thing, these probably won't be built this year, hopefully, maybe, but I think that's something maybe we need Rec and Parks to come up with, is how these are maintained.
Okay, that's fine.
I
My
agree.
joke with the county is they mow the fields once a month or so when they feel like it, and almost every grass field in Carroll County that's used for sports is mowed by the local users on top of that. You know, so I think maintenance is a good issue, but I just, it's not that bad. And I think that's something we can talk about next year's budget of putting in, if Rec and Parks feels like that increases their maintenance.
We do have some program open space money now towards development and maintenance of parks. So.
Yeah, that'll get spent quickly. Any more discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So I do have a question, Ted. What is the current percentage we increased the community college?
3%.
So it's 3% currently?
Their
And
request is for an additional 2%, correct, for compensation?
Well, enough funding to provide a 2% salary
I
increase.
apologize, enough funding to provide a 2%, which
Right.
would equate to what?
In dollars?
Their request is up here on the board. It was
Okay.
about 515,000 ongoing.
So I will make a motion that we put that back into our budget.
so you're looking to put in the 514.6?
Yeah.
What would that do to the bottom line, Heidi?
Okay, just for people watching, I want to make sure there's not a misunderstanding here. we're not really putting it back in. It was never in and taking
Correct.
it out. This would just be a new thing we're.
Correct.
we're
No,
doing.
you are correct. So that would put us at 545 in the.
So this was an agency request that we didn't act on so far.
Right.
Correct.
So was that a motion?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
There you go, we have a motion and a second. So we don't control how they spend their money, but in theory, in their original budget that we increased by the 3%, they had 2.5% raises planned,
I think that's right.
but
Although, now, another changing thing, apparently there's some concern on their part about what the state might do, which could impact where they thought they were.
yes, yes. So if the state doesn't mess with them, this means their employees may get a 4.5. If the state messes with them, they may get less than that.
Yes, and as you pointed out, not our choice.
Yeah,
We make the funding available, and they make their decisions.
okay.
Right.
Any further discussion, or?
I'm sorry, Heidi, when you have a second, can I see the bottom line again? So negative, okay, so 545 this year, and then negative 1.
The 545 wouldn't be negative.
Right, we'll have to balance that out to zero, but
Okay.
that's where it stands right now.
But then, okay, so that'll throw us off by $1 million. That'll increase at 400 to 1 million, or over 1 million in 27? No, 28. That's 28, the third column, right?
Mm-hmm.
Any further discussion or questions?
Not a question, but I'll just make a quick comment. I think, you know, we have a wonderful community college. We have a great education system here as a whole, and I think, obviously, we have the challenges with Blueprint. That has been, you know, an interesting time for us, but we've got a great group of educators over at the community college, and I'd hate to see us lose any of them to other areas, given that we have the successes we have, be it the some of the programs we have in place now.
Yeah, and doesn't matter what I think, but I thought at this meeting, this motion would come up, and I wasn't sure which one of you would do it, but I knew it was in your guys' hearts to want to do this.
And-
Any other discussion?
I guess one more question. You know, the state shift in pension costs includes something from the community college. What was the amount for the community college that we are?
115,000 or something like that. Oh, Heidi says yes.
Right around there.
Ready for the vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
And I'll abstain just because
So
numbers.
3-1 with 1 abstention, so passed.
So to clarify again, I think the question was asked earlier, so the increase in funding, that would have to go to salary increases, or would that be, they could use it to
No,
maybe plus up another program or something, or meet a deficiency someplace else?
right, we can't dictate how they're going to use it, although I think there's every reason to think that this is what they would do with it.
Okay. I mean, they do have plenty of programs that need funding.
Yeah, I
And
think this is just their
that's-
biggest concern.
Okay.
And I think we're in a similar situation with the library, with the school system,
Absolutely.
that they can tell us they want this money and we can't hold them to it, but hopefully we can trust their word.
We did not fund the Miller Center, correct?
Right?
Okay. Leave that alone. Topic I brought up before, Charles Carroll, Community Center. Regardless of how we got here from where the conversation was in its development, a lot of work was put into it. a lot of coordination with the state highway, and it's there now. My biggest concern is that it doesn't turn into an overgrown shed or weeds and nothing used. And talking to Rec and Parks, they don't have the resources necessary currently to do everything they believe should be done at Charles Carroll Community Center, and they need an individual to run that. Rec and Parks sent us, you all have, I know I do, the job description for that position. My biggest concern is that if we do not, the longer we don't appropriately resource Rec and Parks, the harder it is for Charles Carroll and other, just like the fields. We gotta make sure we put money to operate them. And I don't think we did appropriately when Charles Carroll was built. So I don't know if there's a price tag to a position.
Well, before you
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
make a motion to do that, they had 2 position requests for Charles Carroll. What were they?
There was,
Charles Carroll Center Manager and Charles Carroll Recreation Coordinator.
And what was the cost?
Cost associated with the center manager is just over 100,000, 102. And then the Charles Carroll Recreation Coordinator stands at just under 97,000.
So,
so they're looking at the top one.
yeah, I was going to say, I think we want to go with the higher of the
Yeah.
2.
They're-
And I think that would put somebody in the building,
Right.
and they could also have them do other work while they were in the building. It's
Absolutely.
not just for that. So now do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, for putting in the Charles Carroll Community Program and Facility Manager.
Full-time, part-time, trial period?
Whatever the cost is, I don't know.
This would
I
be the
think their
cost for a
intention was
full-time
full-time.
position.
So,
All right, well, I'll second it for discussion, because I do believe in having discussions about these kinds of things.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Questions, discussion?
So back in the winter, and I'll just share this, I guess, for the sake of the conversation. Back in the winter at Pleasant Valley Volunteer Fire Company's annual banquet, I had the occasion to speak to a number of residents who live back in that area. And, I guess earlier that week we discussed and opened the potential of a position like this. And, all these people who I spoke to that evening who live and use that center, they were kind of in disbelief that we would, consider paying somebody $100,000 to operate the center. I guess their thinking was that, well, you may not need somebody to be there full-time because it's relatively lightly used. According to what I was told,
No, I'm
Yes.
just saying, that wouldn't be their salary, that's fully loaded costs.
That's
And-
benefits.
And the first year, it probably includes a little bit more for a computer and some other things, so
Yeah.
the salary is not that.
okay, so that's why I'm wondering whether or not thank you, Roberta. So that's why I'm wondering whether or not we might consider, and I certainly understand the point of wanting to staff a facility that we do own. And so I'm just wondering whether it might not be more prudent to do a part-time position and give that a trial run for a year to see how it ends up working out. If we have somebody there part-time and that individual is in high demand or whatever the case is, and there are more people who are using it, then we can justify a full-time position next year. And if it turns out that, the facility really isn't being used all that much by the public, even with somebody who's there part-time, which would be more than now, then we could certainly make the justification next year not to renew that particular position.
would it be easier to take away a position? Like, next year, like you just said, if the position isn't working out or whatever, we cut a position. We seem to have cut positions in the past, so I don't know if that would be a more appropriate way of doing it.
If you're thinking about this, I agree there. You know, to say a position is temporary, I think would make it very difficult to try and find somebody to take the job. But if you find that a year from now, you're not convinced that it was worth it, you can always make the choice to stop funding the position.
And my concern, and I think everybody knows this, I was opposed to that building being built. I was definitely opposed to it being over $7 million. But if $100,000 can get that building used, I think we'd be fools not to do it. And I think Rec and Parks feels pretty strongly that this will be a big help there. And I'm sure they'll have this person do other stuff. They won't just sit around, but it's tough in these facilities. I don't know what happens there now. And you talked about senior centers. If I want to have a meeting in the senior center and they approve it, their custodian probably meets me there, their maintenance person, and then leaves. So we're putting a $7 million building into whatever user group's using it. I just think we need, the more I've thought about it since we talked about it earlier in the budget, is we need somebody there, and we need them full-time, I think. It's, you know, I can't imagine, I can't imagine a library operating with no employees in the building. You know, it's just the money we've pumped into this, right or wrong, we need to make good use of it. And I think this is a good step in that direction. And I think we can always talk to Rec and Parks, and I'm sure you guys do all year about budget, if this is not worthwhile.
Just like you said.
So who is there currently? I mean, they obviously have to have somebody there at least part of the time in order to open the facility up for the people who do use it, right?
Existing staff goes out 2 or 3 days a week to open, close, et cetera. And I think user groups do also close it up on their own or open it at night.
But I guess here's the question, and I don't know if everybody recalls this or not. We had Rec and Parks in front of us, it might have been 3 or 6 months ago. If it's existing staff or user groups, we had agreed to have a group go out there, and there was a situation where they were going to get a percentage off of the usage. So is that group not maintaining or operating this at this time? Because if they're not, then I'm not really sure what happened to them.
That was last summer, it was gonna be a summer camp.
I thought it was a little more than a summer camp.
Yeah, and I don't think it worked out. I don't think they ended up getting enough registrants, so they backed out of the
Okay.
commitment. Yeah.
I didn't feel Rec and Parks made a very compelling argument for this position, and I thought there were some departments that made a better argument for folks. I was a little surprised at the user numbers and how low they were, very low. If I remember correctly, it might have been averaging, well, I don't want to say what it was because I'll probably misquote the number, but my point being, I'd like to see a plan from Rec and Parks about how they're going to increase usage and what their plan is to get more people into the building before we go ahead and do this. I know, for me, it's almost putting the cart before the horse, but that's my opinion. Others may feel differently. But given the amount of money we put into this, and I've heard a lot about it since I came into office, and I don't know all the answers, but it seems to me that we need to hear from Rec and Parks about how they would use this person. Not only that, more importantly, how they're going to increase users and how they're going to pull, where they're going to pull them from, how they're going to attract them. So I wouldn't be supportive of this position now, but I'd certainly be willing to add it at a later date if I can be convinced it's someone who's actually needed.
Well, I guess for me, the curiosity is, first off, it's 102,450, at least what's put in there for obviously everything, including, you know, computer, salary, whatever. Do we have any idea what the actual salary would be? Is there a range that we would be aware of? I mean, is that 60,000, give or take?
Yes.
So 60? Okay. And, you know, I have to, and this is going to sound pretty interesting, but I hear what Commissioner Gehring is saying, but I also understand exactly where Commissioner Rothstein's coming from, because we're kind of in the proverbial rock and a hard place, because regardless of how we got here, here's where we are. So you know, I would hate to see a property like that underutilized. I do have my concerns and I have serious reservations about it, but I don't know, ignoring it's not going to make it any better.
And I don't know how many of you got a chance. When was the email?
Mid-morning.
This morning.
So it
Yeah,
wasn't-
so
it
just
wasn't-
this morning, but there's,
a lot of time to read it.
3 pages on exactly how they want to use it. I think, and I agree with you, the original presentation we got was like, I wasn't that excited, but reading this and talking to them more, I just feel like it's something that's needed, and I think we've got to hold their feet to the fire that they get something out of it.
I mean, we could sit here and go down history's timeline and get into all the whatevers, and I don't want to do that today.
Yep.
But at the same time, I don't want to have this property sit there that the taxpayers paid for and get underutilized.
Yep.
So the question then becomes, is a $104,000, $102,000 a good investment just to try to move this thing forward?
And that's a ceiling, right?
Well, that's with everything combined, but they're saying it'd be roughly 60-some, I think.
It's salary and benefits.
Salary about,
Yeah,
yeah, with the
salary and
benefits, yes.
But I'm saying that's,
Yeah.
you know,
But just for the public, anybody that's watching, it's not actually a $102,000 job.
yeah, exactly.
Because that's the
Yeah.
confusion. I think sometimes people hear that number and
No, that's
we don't want them thinking
benefits,
that's the
whole
case.
bit, and that's,
it'd be around 60.
yep. Any more questions, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
You got 4-1?
Yeah.
Thank you.
What else?
Nothing for me.
Mr. Rothstein?
Yesterday, and it's not going to be something to put in here right this second, but we went to the, an event dealing with the Preakness, and met with Medco, the Maryland Economic Development Corporation, and MTROA and a couple others. And one of them was asking me about the water and sewer going out there. You know, the utilities.
You mean to Shamrock?
To Shamrock, I apologize, to Shamrock. And, you know, it was, and I don't know what the answer is. I mean, it's not for right this second, but the requirements in the build-out of the county around Shamrock with water, not sewer, but, you know, whatever is necessary, the roads, expansions, all that kind of stuff have to be put into consideration sometime. I don't know when we're gonna be doing that. You know, this is just, I'm just putting a seed in there. It's not like something's gonna happen today. Go ahead.
So the county already put in $1.5 million
Yeah.
in the 2 fiscal years toward water sewer infrastructure.
Right.
And that seemed to be sufficient for their
If that's
needs.
enough, I just want to reply back to her, but,
Um, you know, the state is starting the process. They got permission to purchase the property from the Board of Public Works last week, as you well know, because you were there.
right.
It's my understanding that they have been speaking with our staff, though they don't have to go through much of our
Okay.
process, if any. They are speaking with staff and do seem interested in doing potentially some, you know, work, some traffic impact studies and seeing what would be necessary.
I'm just bringing it up
Vine Road.
because it's fresh on my mind. It's the same thing like with the Veterans Home, you know. There's gonna be an impact, and we're funding some of it. Is that gonna be enough at the end of the day? Probably not. And where are we gonna have to go, you know? I mean, these
I
are
think our
big projects.
planning, zoning, whatever, are talking with the state, and my opinion, the state could probably tell us to stay out of their business, but that's not how they've been talking so far. It looks like
Yeah.
pretty good communication, and one of the things that was, I think's been talked about is a traffic study
Yeah.
to see what they really need. So I think that's going better than expected. I think there's people from, not from Carroll County, that probably think this should have been someplace in where there's public water and sewer, but we got selected, and I think they've already had engineers at the property evaluating septic versus a treatment plant versus
Yeah. I'm
other
just
stuff.
bringing
Yeah,
up
no,
just-
no, I
just-
think,
This could be something that, again, it's gonna be very costly, could be. I just wanna make sure we're well aware of the costs associated with it.
But
Just
I thi-
like the veterans home, because there's
yep,
other impacts to this, so,
Yeah.
that's all. But no, I have nothing, everything else, we want to support schools, us, everything else is done, so.
Mr. Gordon, anything else?
Heidi, could you bring up the nonprofits real quick?
In what way?
And Commissioner Garin, you're next.
Like the groups including, say, Penmar, Care Healing.
Do you want to see what they're receiving now?
Yes, if
for
I
FY
could.
'26?
Perfect.
And why didn't your bottom line change? Oh,
It did.
I
It was
wasn't.
hiding.
I wasn't, thank you.
Just remind me not to save it.
That helps, thanks.
It does. Well, if we're winding down, I do have one request, that we recess for 5 minutes.
Okay.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Thanks.
we're recessed. Back. And we're looking at the nonprofits.
Well, Tom, were you done?
Yeah, yeah, we were just looking.
Is it on mic now?
On the, what's on the screen now, the, what was formerly known as the Rape Crisis Center is now considered the Care Healing Center, line item 74, is that correct? Okay. Well, in keeping with our best attempts to be fiscally responsible, I'm gonna make a motion. It may be one big motion, or it may have to be two. I'm not really sure, so somebody will straighten me out.
We'll straighten it out.
Okay, within economic development, every year, the Board of Carroll County Commissioners funds an effort called MAGIC. And if I'm not mistaken, that's $7,500 a year. We fund MAGIC. I'm going to make a motion that that money be eliminated from the FY26 budget and be added to the budget for line item 74, Care and Healing Center, which I think includes, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, is $7,500.
I'll second that.
Okay, so you want to
We're moving the money
move
from
that,
Magic
but
to.
use the
Rape
money
Crisis.
in something else. And we have a motion and a second.
You wait for her, it'll take days.
Yeah, yeah. No.
Oh, be nice.
Nobody knows this, but during the recess, she like threatened me.
She heard me and is
So,
ignoring
you
me.
know, I'm trying to be nice.
Are you looking for witnesses?
So, okay, so the motion is to eliminate MAGIC and take that money and give it to,
Care healing.
Here.
Care Healing. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. If that's everything, we went around the room, are we ready to say we don't need to meet next Tuesday and these guys in front of us can all start sleeping at night knowing we're
Well,
done
they got a lot of
changing?
work to do. I'll make a motion to adopt the budget.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, and again, the formal adoption, it will be May 22nd, but this is the proposed budget, and you'll have something that says 0 at the bottom line on that Thursday. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, yeah. Any other business? We're ready to adjourn?
Congratulations.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?